Your Windows computer is watching everything you do right now, every website you visit, every password you type, every private message you send, every bank transaction you make on screen, every photo you open, every document you read. Windows is taking a screenshot of all of it every few seconds, building a permanent searchable record of your entire digital life. And the vast majority of Windows users have absolutely no idea this is happening on their own computer. I am not talking about a virus. I am not talking about a hacker. I am talking about a feature that Microsoft deliberately built into Windows and has been quietly rolling out to millions of computers around the world. It is called Windows Recall. And by the end of this video, you are going to understand exactly what it is, exactly why it is one of the most dangerous privacy threats ever built into a mainstream operating system, and most importantly, I am going to show you exactly how to check if it is running on your computer right now and how to shut it down completely. So do not close this video, because what I am about to show you could be the most important thing you do for your digital privacy all year. Let me start by making sure you understand the full scale of what Windows Recall actually does, because when most people first hear about it, their initial reaction is that it cannot possibly be as bad as it sounds. It is. Windows Recall is an artificial intelligence-powered feature built directly into Windows 11 that takes a screenshot of your entire screen every single few seconds, continuously, all day long, every time you're using your computer. It does not matter what application you're using. It does not matter whether you are in your web browser, your email client, your banking app, your private messaging software, or a confidential work document. If it is on your screen, Windows Recall photographs it. Then, using powerful on-device artificial intelligence and something called optical character recognition, it reads and analyzes every single one of those screenshots, extracts all the text and visual information from them, and stores everything in a searchable database on your computer. The idea Microsoft sold to the public was that this would be like giving you a perfect memory. You could search for anything you had ever seen on your screen in plain natural language and find it instantly. Forgot which website had that article you read 3 weeks ago? Just ask Recall. Cannot remember which folder you saved that document in? Recall knows. Trying to find an email from 6 months ago? Recall has a screenshot of it. That is the sales pitch. And on the surface, if you trust Microsoft completely and you believe nothing can ever go wrong, it sounds almost useful. But the moment you start thinking about what that actually means in practice, the moment you start thinking about everything that crosses your screen in a normal day, the picture becomes genuinely disturbing. Think about your average day on a computer. You open your bank account and check your balance. Screenshot. You log into your email and read a private message from your doctor. Screenshot. You type your password into a website. Screenshot. You open a confidential work document with sensitive client information. Screenshot. You have a private conversation with someone on a messaging app. Screenshot. You make a purchase online and enter your credit card number. Screenshot. You check your health records. Screenshot. You look at private photos. Screenshot. You read a message that was supposed to disappear after being viewed. Screenshot. Every single one of these moments captured, analyzed by artificial intelligence, indexed and stored in a database on your machine. A database that, as researchers very quickly discovered when Recall first launched, had some absolutely catastrophic security problems that Microsoft completely failed to anticipate. Here is where the story goes from concerning to genuinely alarming. When security researchers got their hands on the first version of Windows Recall after Microsoft announced it in May 2024, what they found was jaw-dropping. The database where Recall was storing all of these screenshots and all of the extracted text from them was completely unencrypted. There was no protection on it whatsoever, beyond the standard encryption that BitLocker applies to your entire drive. And the critical problem with that is BitLocker encryption does not protect you against the threats that actually matter in this scenario. It does not protect you against malware. It does not protect you against information stealing viruses. Because when your computer is running and you are logged in, BitLocker is decrypted. Which means any piece of malware that manages to get onto your computer while it is running, any information stealer that a hacker tricks you into downloading through a phishing email or a malicious website, has complete and immediate access to the entire Recall database. And that database contains a searchable, indexed, text-extracted record of every password you have typed, every credit card number you have entered, every private message you have sent, every confidential document you have opened, potentially going back weeks or months. Security researcher Kevin Beaumont, one of the first people to do a serious technical examination of Recall, described what he found in stark terms. He found that Recall was capturing and indexing information that by any reasonable standard should never have been stored anywhere, let alone in an unencrypted database that any malware could walk right into. He found that even self-deleting private messages that were designed to disappear after being read were being captured by Recall and stored permanently. He found that photos of people were being indexed by name in the database. He He found that private conversations were being cataloged in a way that created a permanent record that the people having those conversations had never consented to and had no idea existed. The cybersecurity community's reaction was immediate, and it was fierce. Experts described recall as a potential security nightmare. They described it as fundamentally incompatible with basic principles of user privacy and data security. They pointed out that what Microsoft had essentially done was build a keylogger and a screen recorder directly into Windows itself, the kind of software that, if it were installed by anyone other than Microsoft, would immediately be classified as spyware or malware. Because that is literally what it is doing. It is recording everything you do on your screen. It is extracting and indexing all the text you type. It is building a comprehensive surveillance database of your computer activity. The only difference between Windows Recall and malware that does the same thing is that Microsoft is the one who built it, and it is opt-in rather than being secretly installed. But as we are going to discuss in a moment, the opt-in part is something you need to be extremely careful about, because the way Microsoft has rolled this out means many people are not fully aware they have turned it on, and Windows updates have a well-documented history of reverting privacy settings without warning users. The backlash from the security community when Recall was first announced in May 2024 was so severe that Microsoft actually paused its rollout. They delayed it, they went back, and made changes. They announced that Recall would be opt-in rather than opt-out. They announced that they would encrypt the database more robustly. They announced that Recall would require Windows Hello biometric authentication, meaning you would need to use your fingerprint or your face to access the stored screenshots. They said they were adding filters to prevent Recall from capturing sensitive information like passwords and credit card numbers. And Microsoft said something that they have repeated consistently throughout this entire controversy, something that millions of people have taken at face value. They said that all of the data captured by Recall stays on your device. They said it is processed locally by on-device artificial intelligence. They said it is never sent to Microsoft's servers. They said Microsoft cannot see your screenshots and Microsoft cannot access your Recall database. That is what Microsoft said. Now let me tell you why that statement, even if it is completely true today, should not make you feel safe. And let me tell you about the problems that researchers found even after Microsoft made all of those claimed improvements. Security analysts who examined the updated, supposedly improved version of Recall found that while Microsoft had made meaningful efforts to address some of the most glaring problems, serious concerns remained. The filtering system designed to prevent Recall from capturing sensitive information was found to be inconsistent and unreliable. Researchers demonstrated that, in many cases, passwords, credit card details, and other sensitive data were still being captured and stored because the AI filtering system was not catching everything. The on-device processing claim is technically accurate, but it raises a different concern that Microsoft never addresses in its public communications. The data stays on your device, yes, but that data is now a concentrated, organized, searchable goldmine of everything, sensitive about your digital life. And devices get stolen. Devices get infected with malware. Devices get accessed by other people in your home or your workplace. Devices eventually get sold, given away, or recycled. And the question of whether a factory reset completely and securely wipes the Recall database is a question that most ordinary users would have no reliable way to answer or verify. A Forrester research analysis from 2025 found that basic encryption was absent from 73% of what they classified as productivity AI tools. Think about that. The majority of AI productivity tools, the category that Windows Recall sits squarely within, were found to have inadequate encryption protecting user data. And the concern that researchers raised about Recall's future evolution is perhaps the most important one of all. Microsoft's track record on user privacy is not good. The company has a long and well-documented history of quietly expanding what data it collects, quietly changing how that data is used, and doing so through terms of service updates and software updates that the vast majority of users never read and never understand. Even if Microsoft is telling the absolute truth today when it says it cannot access your Recall data, that could change with a software update tomorrow. And once a surveillance infrastructure like Recall is built into the operating system and normalized, once hundreds of millions of people have it running on their computers, the potential for scope creep is enormous. Privacy advocates and security researchers are not just worried about what Recall does today. They are worried about what it will be doing in 3 years and 5 years, as Microsoft continues to evolve it and as the commercial incentives to monetize that data grow. Now, I want to talk about something that should alarm every single person who uses their Windows computer for anything work-related, because the implications of Recall in professional settings are even more serious than its implications for individual privacy. Think about what happens in a typical professional environment. A lawyer opens a file containing confidential client communications. A doctor opens a patient's medical record. A financial advisor looks at a client's investment portfolio. A journalist opens notes for a sensitive story. An accountant reviews tax returns. A business executive reviews merger negotiations. An HR manager opens files containing employee personal information. A software developer looks at proprietary source code. Under most professional privacy frameworks, under GDPR in Europe, under HIPAA in the United States for healthcare data, under CCPA in California, under dozens of other privacy regulations around the world, the organizations handling this sensitive information have strict legal obligations about how it is stored, who can access it, and how it is protected. Windows Recall potentially creates an unauthorized copy of all of that sensitive information, stores it in a database on the local device, and does so in a way that most organizations' IT departments did not sanction, and most employees never explicitly consented to. Microsoft actually recognized this and disabled Recall by default on managed business PCs. But the reality of modern work means that millions of people do sensitive professional work on personal devices that are not managed by their organization's IT department. Those devices have no such protection. And the person using that device to check work email on their personal laptop may have just created a searchable archive of confidential client data that their organization has no idea exists and no control over. The reaction from the broader technology community to Windows Recall was not just criticism. Other technology companies actually built countermeasures to protect their users from it. Signal, the privacy-focused encrypted messaging application, was one of the first. Signal developer Joshua Lund said publicly that Microsoft had simply given them no other option. Signal built a feature called Screen Security that sets a digital rights management flag on the Signal application window, which technically blocks Windows Recall and other screenshot tools from capturing Signal's content. Signal said, and I want you to think about how significant this is, that apps like theirs should not have to implement workarounds like this just to maintain the privacy and integrity of their services. Signal enabled this protection by default for all Windows 11 users. The web browser, Brave, and the ad blocker AdGuard added similar screenshot protection for their applications in July 2025. Think about what it means when privacy-focused technology companies feel compelled to build defenses against a feature of the underlying operating system. It means the operating system itself has become something that privacy-conscious software developers feel they need to protect their users from. Now I need to address the argument that Microsoft and its defenders make most often when people raise these concerns, because it is an argument that sounds reasonable on the surface but falls apart under examination. The argument goes like this. Recall is opt-in. You choose to turn it on. If you do not want it, you simply do not enable it. And if you are worried about it, you can turn it off at any time. Here is why that argument does not provide the reassurance that Microsoft wants it to. First, the design of the opt-in process during Windows setup is not as neutral as Microsoft implies. During the setup process for a new Copilot Plus PC, users are presented with the recall option. But the framing of the choice and the way the interface is designed matters enormously in shaping whether people actually read what they are agreeing to or whether they click through habitually. Most people have been conditioned through years of software setup processes to click next, 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 accept, 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 without reading what they are agreeing to. Second, and this is critically important, Windows updates have a well-documented and repeated history of reverting user settings without explicit notification. Privacy advocates and technology journalists have documented multiple instances over the years where Windows updates quietly re-enabled features that users had previously disabled, or changed default settings in ways that expanded Microsoft's data collection, with no clear notification to users that this had happened. Privacy experts explicitly warn that you should check whether recall is disabled after every Windows update, because an update could turn it back on. Third, Recall is currently available on Copilot Plus PCs, which are computers with a specific type of high-performance neural processing unit built in. But Microsoft has made clear that its intention is to expand Recall's availability over time as the hardware becomes more widespread. The universe of people who need to be paying attention to this is going to grow substantially. Let me walk you through exactly how to check whether Windows Recall is running on your computer right now, and exactly how to disable it and remove it completely, because this is the part of this video that you actually need to act on. The first thing you need to do is check whether your computer is even capable of running Recall. Windows Recall currently requires what Microsoft calls a Copilot Plus PC, which means your computer needs to have a neural processing unit capable of performing at least 40 trillion operations per second. If you have a relatively new computer, particularly a laptop purchased in late 2024 or 2025, there's a real chance you have the right hardware. To check, open your Start menu, search for System Information, open it, and look at your processor details. If you have a Qualcomm Snapdragon X series processor, an AMD Ryzen AI 300 series processor, or an Intel Core Ultra Series 2 processor, your machine likely has the NPU required for Recall. If your processor is older than these or does not fall into these families, Recall is almost certainly not available on your hardware, and you have one less thing to worry about. but keep watching anyway, because the principles and the privacy concerns here apply to the broader direction Microsoft is taking Windows, and you need to understand them. If you have compatible hardware, here is how you check whether recall is enabled and how you turn it off. Open your Windows Settings app by pressing the Windows key and the I key at the same time. In the Settings menu, look for Privacy and Security in the left sidebar and click on it. Scroll down through the Privacy and Security options until you find Recall and Snapshots. Click on it. If you see a toggle that says Save Snapshots and it is turned on, that means Recall is actively taking screenshots of your screen right now. Turn that toggle off immediately. Once you have turned off Save Snapshots, the continuous screenshotting will stop. But if you want to go further, and privacy experts strongly recommend that you do, you should not just disable Recall, but uninstall it completely. Disabling it through the settings toggle stops it from running, but the feature itself remains installed on your computer. Windows updates have historically been capable of re-enabling features that were only toggled off rather than properly removed. To uninstall Recall entirely, press the Windows key and S at the same time to open Windows Search. Type Turn Windows Features on or off into the search box and click on the result. A window will appear showing a list of Windows features with checkboxes next to them. Scroll down through the list until you find Recall. Make sure the checkbox next to it is unchecked. If it is checked, uncheck it. Click OK and then restart your computer when prompted. Once your computer restarts, Recall will be fully removed from your system rather than just paused. Now here's the step that most people skip and that privacy experts say is actually the most important one. After you disable or uninstall Recall, you need to delete the data that has already been collected if Recall was running on your computer before you discovered this video. Even after you turn off Recall and uninstall it, the database of screenshots and extracted text that it already built does not automatically delete itself. That data is sitting on your computer. To delete it, go back into Settings, Privacy and Security, Recall and Snapshots. Before you remove Recall entirely, look for the option to delete snapshots. You can delete snapshots from specific time periods, from specific applications, or you can delete all snapshots entirely. Choose to delete all snapshots. Confirm the deletion. This removes the accumulated database of your screen history that Recall built while it was running. Do this before you uninstall Recall, because once Recall is uninstalled, the interface for managing its data is removed along with it, and accessing the raw database files to delete them manually becomes more technically complicated. There's another layer to this conversation that goes beyond Windows Recall specifically, because Recall is not the only way that Windows collects data about what you do on your computer. It is the most dramatic and most visible example, but it sits within a much broader pattern of data collection that most Windows users have never fully examined or understood. Windows 11 has a feature called Diagnostic Data Collection that by default sends information about how you use your computer back to Microsoft. This includes things like which applications you use, how long you use them, what errors occur, and information about your hardware. Microsoft offers two settings for this, a basic level and a full level, and by default, many systems are set to full, which means a substantially larger volume of data about your computing behavior is being transmitted to Microsoft's servers continuously. You should check this setting. Go to Settings, Privacy and Security, Diagnostics and Feedback. Set diagnostic data to the required option, which is the minimum rather than optional. This does not eliminate all data transmission, but it reduces it significantly. While you are in the Privacy and Security section of Settings, it is worth going through each category methodically. Look at which applications have permission to access your microphone and turn off access for any app that does not genuinely need it. Look at which applications have access to your camera and revoke permissions for anything that does not need camera access. Look at your location permissions and disable location access for any application where it is not essential. Look at the activity history settings and make sure that option is disabled, because activity history is another Microsoft feature that tracks what you do on your computer and can sync that activity history across devices via your Microsoft account. The conversation about Windows Recall and Windows privacy more broadly connects to a much bigger question that everyone who uses technology in the modern world is going to have to grapple with over the coming years. We are entering an era where artificial intelligence is being embedded directly into operating systems, into the foundational software that runs our computers, with capabilities that were simply not possible 5 years ago. AI can now see everything on your screen. AI can read and understand every document on your device. AI can listen to every conversation near your microphone. AI can analyze your usage patterns and build detailed profiles of your behavior, your interests, your relationships, and your habits. When that AI is running locally on your device, as Microsoft claims Recall does, the data stays with you. But when the companies building these AI features have commercial interests that are served by that data, when those companies have historically demonstrated a willingness to expand their data collection practices quietly, When the operating system and the AI feature are owned by the same corporation that sells advertising and enterprise services, the promise that your data stays local and private requires a level of trust that the historical record simply does not support. Microsoft is not the only company doing this. Google is doing it with Android and Chrome. Apple is doing it with its AI features on iOS and macOS. Amazon is doing it with Alexa. The trend toward ambient AI that is always watching, always listening, always learning from everything you do on your devices is accelerating rapidly across the entire technology industry. Windows Recall is simply the most visible and most documented example because it launched in a way that the security community was able to examine closely, and because its initial implementation had problems severe enough that they could not be ignored. But the underlying question about who owns the data that AI systems collect about your behavior on your own devices, about what rights you have to that data, about what happens to it over time, about whether the convenience these features offer is worth the privacy cost, these questions are going to define the relationship between technology companies and their users for the next decade. What you can do right now, today, is take control of the settings on your own Windows computer. Go through the steps I described. Check whether Recall is enabled. If it is, disable it and delete the data it has collected. While you are in Settings, go through the Privacy and Security section methodically and review every permission, every data collection setting, every feature that you did not explicitly choose to enable. Make informed decisions about which of these you're comfortable with and which you are not. Do not accept the default settings on blind trust. Default settings on modern operating systems are not designed with your privacy as the primary consideration. They are designed to maximize the data available to the company that made the operating system. Changing them does not require technical expertise. It requires about 15 minutes of your time and the willingness to actually look at what your computer is doing in your name. There is one more thing I want to leave you with, because it matters for understanding where all of this is heading. When security researchers and privacy advocates pushed back against Windows Recall, when the reaction was loud enough and critical enough that Microsoft actually paused its rollout and went back to make changes, it proved something important. It proved that public pressure works. It proved that when enough people understand what a technology is doing and express clearly that they are not comfortable with it, even a company as large and as dominant as Microsoft responds. The initial version of Recall that Microsoft shipped would have stored everything in an unencrypted database with no opt-in requirement and no way to remove it. The version that exists today is meaningfully different because the security community and the privacy community and millions of concerned users made enough noise that Microsoft had no choice but to go back and redesign it. That is not a reason to trust Microsoft. It is a reason to stay informed. It is a reason to keep paying attention to what the technology you use every day is actually doing. Because the moment the public stops paying attention is the moment these companies push things further than they would otherwise dare. Your data is yours, your screen is yours, your private life on your computer is yours, and understanding the tools that are watching it is the first step to making sure it stays that way. So do 3 things after you finish watching this video. First, check your computer right now using the steps I walked you through. Second, share this video with anyone you know who uses Windows and who has not heard about Windows Recall, because most people have not. And third, every time you install a Windows update, take 2 minutes to check these settings again, because as I told you, updates have a history of resetting things you have already changed. You now know more about what is running on your Windows computer than most people will ever discover. Use that knowledge, because your privacy in the digital age is not going to be protected by technology companies on your behalf. It is going to be protected by you, for yourself, one informed decision at a time. And I want to be clear about something that most tech channels will not say directly. This is not a one-time fix. This is not something you do once and forget about. The relationship between you and your operating system has fundamentally changed in the era of embedded AI, and it requires a different kind of ongoing attention than it did 5 years ago, when Windows was a tool that simply ran your applications. Checking your privacy settings once a year was probably sufficient. Today, Windows is an AI-powered platform that is continuously evolving, continuously adding new features, continuously expanding what it monitors and what it processes. New Copilot features land with updates. New AI capabilities get integrated into File Explorer, into Search, into the Photos app, into Edge browser. Each of these features potentially touches your data in new ways. Staying private on Windows today means treating your privacy settings as something you review regularly rather than something you configure once and walk away from. Think of it like checking the locks on your house. You would not check them once when you first move in and then never check them again for 5 years. You check them because the environment changes. New vulnerabilities are discovered. New features get installed. Things you turned off get turned back on by updates. Your threat model evolves as your life changes, as your computer holds different kinds of sensitive information at different stages of your career and your personal life. Now let me talk about something that goes deeper than just the settings inside Windows, because even if you disable Recall and review all your privacy permissions, there are other vectors through which your Windows computer may be sharing information with third parties that most users never think about. The first is your Microsoft account. If you sign into Windows with a Microsoft account rather than a local account, a substantial amount of information about your computer usage is tied to that account and synchronized to Microsoft's servers. This includes your browser history if you use Edge, your saved passwords if you use Edge's built-in password manager, your Wi-Fi network passwords, your app settings, your search history through Windows Search, and your Cortana interaction history. Using a local account instead of a Microsoft account for your Windows login eliminates this synchronization. You can do this by going to Settings, Accounts, Your Info, and choosing to sign in with a local account instead. You will lose some features that depend on the Microsoft account integration, like syncing settings across devices, but for many users, the privacy benefit outweighs those conveniences. If you want to keep your Microsoft account but reduce what it syncs, go to Settings, Accounts, Windows Backup, and turn off the options for remembering apps, preferences, and other account information that you do not want synchronized to Microsoft's cloud. The second vector that most people overlook is the advertising ID. Windows assigns every user an advertising identifier, a unique code that advertisers and app developers can use to track your activity across different applications on your device and build a behavioral profile for targeted advertising purposes. This is exactly the same concept as the advertising identifier on your phone, and just like on your phone, most people have never heard of it and have no idea it exists. To turn it off, go to Settings, Privacy and Security General, and turn off the option that says, Let apps show me personalized ads by using my advertising ID. Do this on every Windows device you own. It does not eliminate all advertising or all tracking, but it removes one of the primary mechanisms Microsoft and third-party apps use to build a commercial profile of your behavior. While you are in that general privacy settings screen, also turn off the option that lets websites provide locally relevant content by accessing your language list, and turn off the option for letting Windows track app launches to improve start and search results. Each of these sounds innocuous in isolation, but collectively they contribute to a detailed picture of your computer behavior that you have never explicitly consented to share. The third and perhaps most overlooked privacy consideration is your browser. The vast majority of Windows users use Microsoft Edge as their primary browser, either because it came pre-installed and they never changed it, or because Windows actively promotes it and makes changing your default browser more complicated than it should be. Edge collects a significant amount of browsing data and has features that Microsoft uses for various purposes, including improving its AI services and its advertising products. If you are using Edge, go into Edge's settings, find Privacy, Search and Services, and set your tracking prevention to strict rather than balanced. Turn off the option to share diagnostic data about browser usage with Microsoft. Turn off personalization and advertising features. Alternatively, consider switching your primary browser to one that is designed with privacy as a core principle from the ground up, rather than as an afterthought. Browsers like Firefox or Brave are worth exploring, and both of them, as I mentioned earlier, have added specific protections against Windows Recall capturing your browsing activity. The fourth thing I want you to understand is about what happens when you eventually get rid of your Windows computer. When you sell it, donate it, recycle it, or throw it away. The vast majority of people do a basic factory reset on their computer before passing it on, believing that this wipes their data. A basic factory reset does not securely erase your data. What it does is remove the file system pointers that tell Windows where your files are, but the actual data often remains on the storage device and can be recovered with freely available data recovery tools. This is especially relevant in the context of Windows Recall, because the recall database could potentially be recovered from a device even after a basic reset. If you are preparing a computer to pass on to someone else, use the advanced reset option in Windows that says remove everything and clean the drive, which performs a more thorough wipe. For solid-state drives, which are the storage type in most modern laptops, look for a manufacturer-provided secure erase tool, as standard file deletion methods are less reliable on SSDs. Taking this step ensures that whatever recall captured, whatever your browsing history contained, whatever private documents and photos were on that machine, none of it travels with the device to its next owner. The bigger picture here, the one that connects everything I have been talking about in this video, is that the technology industry has spent the last decade building systems that are extraordinarily powerful and convenient, and then using that convenience to extract an enormous amount of behavioral data from the people using those systems. This has happened gradually, incrementally. through thousands of small decisions about default settings and interface design in terms of service language that the average person never reads. Windows Recall is simply the most dramatic and most visible instance of this pattern because it is so direct. It takes a screenshot of everything, every few seconds. That directness is actually useful in a way because it forces a conversation about privacy that vague and technical data collection practices never quite manage to trigger. When you tell someone that their computer is photographing their screen every few seconds, they understand immediately what that means. In a way they do not when you explain that an app is collecting anonymized telemetry data. The screenshot is concrete. The screenshot is personal. The screenshot is something they can visualize, and visualizing it makes it real in a way that abstract data collection language never achieves. You now know what Windows Recall is. You know why it matters. You know how to check whether it is running on your computer. You know how to disable it, remove it, and delete the data it has already collected. You know the other privacy settings you should review while you are in there, and you know the broader context that this fits into and why staying informed about what your technology is doing is something that requires ongoing attention rather than a one-time fix. Go do it now. Right now before you open another tab or watch another video. Open your Windows settings and check. Because the most valuable thing this video can give you is not information, it is action.